Hey there, it's Sam with the new moon in Leo forecast. This new moon happened on September 5th at about 8 a.m. Pacific time, and it's in the sign of Leo. So the new moon is really when a cycle begins. So we start this cycle of Leo, which is about acting with strength and power and integrity and consistency in line with our big vision in life, that consistent thing we want to bring out in the world. And so this is the nature of the sun, which is the center of our solar system and the reason for life itself. It comes from the power of the sun, and more importantly the generosity of the sun to just give its power. For 4.5 billion years the sun has been giving its power. There's only been life on Earth for the last 500 million years, so 9/10 of the time the sun was just there peacefully existing with nothing. And eventually, after 4 billion years or so, life started to develop. The last 100,000 years or so, there's been intelligent life like humans with consciousness. But that's a small portion of the sun's life. The sun is also the part of us that doesn't need a bunch of external forms in order to be self-contained. So the sun is itself not just in the sky as we see by its life cycle, but the sun in you is that non-localized self, that supreme self, the Paramatman, the being in you that is not just about this lifetime and everything you get all distracted by in this world in this lifetime. So that's what the sun is in you as well. Not the self of me, oh yes, me, this glorious me that everything revolves around. That's not the deepest self of you. In fact, that unique self is shown by the rising sign and the ascendant and the ruling planet. Those are the creative roads toward this lifetime, or the roads toward your creative power in this lifetime. The sun is actually the path to your supreme self, the non-localized self. Now, and of course, if people have been born with a Leo ascendant and they're a Leo in this lifetime, those things are similar, but there's no hierarchy. Then they still have to find their way through their unique self to the supreme self. But the sun cycle, the Leo cycle that we're in right now brings this power of the sun into focus and into clarity. So it's that part of you that has a bigger vision for your life than just your happiness in the moment and all of the things of this world and this lifetime that we get all hung up on, the family and the this and the that. As great as all those things are, they're just in this lifetime, in this limited identity. The sun is what burns off the impurities of what we accumulate in this lifetime through this limited identity. And Leo is the sign where we feel that. So this is why we tend to want to do big things in Leo. And Leo people tend to want to do big things. If their rising sign is in Leo, or any planets in Leo, if they have a lot of planets there, they're looking to do something bigger, like a kingdom. Leo is the king on the kingdom. And so the king on the kingdom, in order for the kingdom to flourish, the king has to sacrifice a lot of his own happiness. In fact, if he's not willing to do that, then the kingdom is not going to flourish. Instead, he'll take from the kingdom rather than give to the kingdom. So if you want the kingdom of your life to flourish, you need to give. You need to be generous with your energy, generous with your power. And then you'll see your legacy spread and grow and your kingdom flourish. And it happens because you empower others, not because you're looking to suck power from others. Just like the king analogy and the kingdom analogy. The bad king, who is just concerned about himself, wants to suck all the energy from the kingdom toward himself so that he can be happy. And that analogy is important because this new moon is happening in Purva Falguni, which is ruled by the god Bugga, the god of delight. And it's good to be the king, and it's delightful to be the king, and we're meant to live full on empowered and enjoy that. But again, if it's all about ourself and our kingdom revolves around our own happiness, then it can be it's the lower form of delight. And there's a story from several of the Indian scriptures that talks about the yagya of Daksha, who was the father of Lord Shiva's first wife Sati, and there was a ceremony where Lord Shiva wasn't invited and his daughter wasn't either, and it was a great disgrace, mainly because Lord Shiva's kind of unkept and kind of messy and sloppy, kind of like me. No, he's just kind of a sloppy, walking around with cobras around his neck and smeared with sacred ash and ghouls and goblins following him around. Not keeping with the propriety of culture. And so, but he's the great Lord Shiva, which doesn't need anything of this world. So Daksha was at his yagya, his fire ceremony, and he was making fun of Lord Shiva. And Shiva's wife came, Sati, and heard this and was so angered that she threw herself on the fire and killed herself because of the disgrace, because she had been disgraced by her family and her family disgraced Lord Shiva, so she immolated herself on the fire. And then Lord Shiva came and exacted revenge on those. One of them was the god called Bugga, the god of delight. And what Bugga did was kind of wink when Daksha was saying things about Shiva. Now see, it was very conspiratorial. It wasn't open. Daksha didn't say, Lord Shiva is disgusting, or it wasn't that overt. It was subversive, like the way governments play these little power games, these little shell games behind the scenes, little innuendos, and something like, well, all of the important people are gathered here today. Everybody who matters is here, or something like that, and then, without saying Shiva's name directly or something, there was all of these innuendos. And so Bugga was one of the gods who was there, and he winked, yeah, we'll take care of all of the citizens and we'll make sure that health care for everyone. Little wink. Our government would never support anything like that. We are for the people. Yeah. And everybody kind of knows they're playing this little game. This is the corruption of power. And the god Bugga winked at Daksha's sacrifice. And so when Lord Shiva came and destroyed everyone, he poked out Bugga's eyes. And then it is said that only after Shiva poked out his eyes could he see. Bugga could see because Shiva poked out his eyes. So it's this kind of conspiratorial, cooperation with oppression that we can see sometimes in Purva Falguni. It's good to be king, so, we're the elite class. So notice if you have planets there, I have Mars there. So, this is the Nakshatra of this new moon, Purva Falguni, and instead of being seduced by the trappings of power and saying, well, it's good to be king and we deserve this, and, taking the pleasure for yourself, give it to others. Be generous with the power. Now, a few other things that are really important on this new moon is Venus and Mercury are both about to change signs. They're right at the end of their signs. Venus is right at the end of Virgo, and Mercury is right at the end of Leo. So, on the 6th, Mercury is going to be exalted and Venus is going to move into its own sign. So there's a lot of really powerful, positive energy about to start. I said in my earlier forecast this week, in my September forecast, that from the 6th until the 16th, it's very auspicious time. Because there's going to be a bunch of planets either exalted or in their own signs at that time. So, very sort of transformative time now on this new moon. Not only is it the new moon, which is the beginning of that Leo cycle, the beginning of that time for independence, clarity, generosity, and sitting on the throne of power in your own life, but we're about to have this very auspicious transit of Mercury into Virgo, where he's exalted, and Venus into Libra, where it's in its own sign, which is quite beneficial. And that'll be for the next sort of 10 days, from the 6th until the 16th. And then even after that, you're going to have that really strong stellium set up for a while, where planets are either exalted or with planets that are in their own signs. So of course we're still continuing with Saturn and Rahu are in Libra, so there's a lot of relationship themes being worked on. That's going to be happening for the next year or so. and Jupiter is aspecting from Gemini, so it's a great time to be studying, to be figuring out things intellectually, to be really putting into practice those things that you believe, not just believing in them, but understanding them intellectually. So that's why it's a great time to study things that you believe in, including things like astrology and other metaphysical things that you believe in, that you know are right. I just know that's right. Well, now's the time to actually find out how it works with Jupiter and Gemini for the next, 8 months or so, 9 months until next June. And then Mars is still debilitated in Cancer. It's going to be there for a while, so we're still, maybe having some emotional frustrations, but it's also a time where we can be really connecting to the heart in the midst of those frustrations, especially with things that we love, people that we love, our loved ones. Mars is somewhat subdued. It'll be quite improved once Venus gets out of Virgo and moves into Libra. That should be a little bit better, even though it'll be joined Saturn and Rahu. Venus in Libra is much more oriented towards compromise and actively working that dynamic, whereas Venus in Virgo has been a little more kind of, grouchy and just not feeling so good. It's a real auspicious time the next few weeks as Mercury and Venus change signs, and as the Sun will be in Leo for the next, for the next 10 days or so. So it's not just a new moon cycle, but the Sun is in its own sign. So it's not just a time to establish yourself as the king of your domain, but the king is on the throne. The Sun is the king and the Sun is on the throne. The Sun is in Leo. So your power is where it should be right now. Whereas other new moon cycles, maybe when they're in Cancer or Gemini, the Sun is not in his own domain. So the king is like somewhere else. Now the king is on the throne. This is why you're feeling so inspired to get it done. So get it done in a highest sense. And take your high vision and bring it into the world through generosity, just like the sun in the sky. Don't overlook the sun in the sky. Don't overlook the actual nature of those grahas. They're not just big rocks out there. I mean, the sun is an amazing being. It's a big ball of fire that's been sitting there for 4.5 billion years. It's the reason anything is alive. Every heartbeat, every idea, everything that's ever happened, happens because of the sun. Not just abstract, right now, every day. All the food you eat is just sunlight in a form that you can digest. All the power comes from the sun, no matter how you slice it. Just think of that for a second. Everything that moves, moves because of the sun. And it's always been that way. So it's an immense energy, and it's the energy in you. So ponder that as well. If you want to see how this affects you and your sign, you can get a 2-week trial to my member site. Hundreds of people are members, have been members over the years, and you can too. Only 1 penny for a 2-week trial membership.